We all been there before. You come back home from school or work, excited just to sit down and make music, and when you really sit down and try to make something, you end up getting something that's really fucking weird, to be honest. I want to break down all the ways that helped me just to kind of transform my music production skills from like being a beginner to actually knowing what the fuck is going on when I sit down and make stuff. The most famous myth that I really heard everywhere, to be honest, is just the fact that you don't need music theory.
You don't need me. Like, this is... Okay, I think you need theory.
That's kind of falls in a way. I'm gonna explain it to you with an example, okay? I'm a computer science major, right? So we all know that you need math to some sort of a degree to actually be successful at computer science, you know? They're both connected to each other. I'm not saying that you need the most advanced math in the world to be successful in computer science. You just need to know basic math, you know? Honestly, like the same thing really applies with music. If you don't know music theory, you cannot make music. And at the same time, I'm not telling you need to know like complex music theory, Beethoven level. I'm just saying knowing what you need from the music theory to produce and create beats you personally enjoy listening to. You're probably wondering, where should I start in music theory? I can answer that question for you. So right off the bat, don't ask me why I changed my shirt. I recorded this in a different day, that's all it is. So the first thing you really need to focus on is understanding what's the emotion of the melody. Is it a sad melody? Is it a happy melody? But you really need to stick to a vibe that you want to do. Like you want to do dark, hard beats like Lil Baby, Lil Durk. Stick to that. What I'm saying is pick a style of melodies that you really enjoy listening to and just learn what scales that fit into that style. So I'll give you an example. Almost every single internet money beat is literally made out of the minor natural scale. The minor scale is really nice to learn because you get the complexity of an emotional melody, but at the same time you can make it dark if you wanted to. So there's some ways that you can literally import this scales that you really personally like inside the piano roll in your FL Studio. And just to kind of simply do that, you want to go to this drop down menu. You want to click on view, and then you want to do scale highlighting. You want to pick your root note in here, and after that you pick your scale. The most important two scales that I really almost use every single time is the minor natural Elan and the minor harmonic. If you don't really know what kind of melodies you should be making and have no idea where to start, I'll suggest to start with the minor scale because it has a lot of emotion in it that's enough for trap melodies in general. Your root note is always highlighted. So as soon as you pick your scale and your root note, you're gonna start to see these white notes in the background. These white notes are the notes that you're allowed to use. These are the notes that are gonna be inside that minor natural scale that we just picked. So there's something else that I want to talk about, which is kind of important in a way where you don't really need to memorize every single scale. It's all about memorizing this interval pattern. And what interval patterns does, it pretty much gives you an idea how you can tell what's the next note inside the scale without even memorizing what the note is. By just memorizing a pattern of whole and half notes. You're probably asking, what's the difference? What is a whole and a half note is? If our starting root note is C, and we're looking at the C minor scale right here, our next note is gonna be this D right here. The distance between here to here is a whole note, which means we had to skip one note just to get there. That's literally what a whole note means, that you're skipping one note between the starting note and the next note. A half note is the same thing, but you're not skipping a note. So what you do is, after the D, this D sharp right here is a half note, meaning it comes exactly after the starting note that you picked. So you can think about it like this. A whole note, you skip one note. A half note, you go immediately to the next note. If you memorize this difference between a whole note and a half note, you can memorize this minor scale pattern, which goes as following. The starting note is C. We got to go a whole step away from that, which means we got to skip one note. The next step is going to be a half, which means we don't skip anything. We just add a note to the next note exactly. Whole, we skip one, and you can see that's another whole. We skipped another one also. A half, we didn't skip anything. Another whole note, and you can see I skipped this one note in the middle right here. The white notes are literally the notes that I put down here, which are the notes that are inside your scale. So if you can remember this pattern, a whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole. If you can remember this pattern, you can literally go up and down the scale, changing the key to any key you want. So for example, if you go up to D sharp, that's your D sharp minor scale right there. If you go down to a D, that's a D minor scale right there. And if you're asking, what are the notes over here? All these notes are just the same thing, just repeated on top. Our root note is C right here, but if you shift it down to C, as you can see, everything just lands with the white notes that I created. So every single scale has an interval pattern. If you can memorize these interval patterns, you can literally go freestyle on any key and still sounds fire as fuck. Another important point is to kind of limit yourself to certain plugins that you personally enjoy. Let me tell you why. So there was an experiment done back in the day. I don't remember when exactly, but I remember reading this online once, that they got a producer with an artist and another producer with an artist, and they put them in two completely different rooms. And the thing is, the only difference between these two producers is that one producer had access to all the plugins out there and the other one had limited amounts of plugins. The result is the person with limited amount of plugins ended up getting something that's more creative and that's more interesting to listen to. And the person who had access to all these plugins made the most mid beat ever. You're probably like, what the fuck? That makes no sense. I know, but think about it for a second. If you really limit yourself to certain plugins, you're gonna really get to a point where you're gonna have to force yourself to be creative. So do me a favor, write down all the plugins that you think sound really good for you or you enjoy the sound of. The next thing is effects. Effects plugin is a completely different realm, and I can go on about this for hours because there's reverb, there's delay, there's EQ, there's a lot of important stuff that you need to keep in mind when making a song, you know. But at the same time, what's important is knowing when to use them. Like for example, I've seen this a lot. You can't just add halftime to everything and expect it to sound good. But like what I'm trying to say is you have to know when to use the effects plugins. So for example, you made a piano, you'd be like, oh, this is a little dry, maybe add a little bit of reverb to it, you know. Your ear would start to really catch up by itself, knowing what sounds good and what you really need inside your mix. And you can only get familiar with that the more you use these effect plugins and the more you know what they can do to your sound. So just to kind of sum up this whole video all together, there's three main important things that we really focus on. First one is you have to learn music theory. This is the only way to really actually understand what the fuck you're doing. Because if you don't know music theory, you're just clicking shit. You're not gonna get any results. Or you're gonna get results, but it's not gonna be the best results that you wanted. Second thing is, don't spend money on stupid plugins, bro. Stick with what you have, learn what you have, get really good at what you have, and then consider about buying new plugins. Third thing is, if you don't know what effects plugins do in general, you have to learn that. Luckily for you, I'm going to be explaining all the effects plugins in the next video. So if you want to see the next video, make sure you subscribe. But I appreciate you guys for listening. I'll see you guys in the next one. T.Rex out.